University. Tsvi has a lot of industrial experience as well as a software developer, team leader, project manager for like 20 years. And since being at the University of Haifa in 2004, his research has focused on intelligent user interfaces, focusing on supporting individuals and groups in ubiquitous computing environment, and more specifically on problems related to ubiquitous user modeling. So for most of his career, Tsvi has been working on modeling users and groups interaction with cultural heritage artifacts. And he has run a number of user studies in museums, tracked users during their interaction with exhibitions, primarily for providing adaptive support and design interaction. So with no further ado.
Thank you, Stella. I can go away now. You know everything. So first we start with some introductory material less related to the talk. This is the view from the mountain, the Carmel Mountain toward the port. So this is Haifa. Very nice place to visit, very nice views, and there are the Baha'i gardens there. And in case, just to remind everybody, Israel is in the corner of the Mediterranean, and Haifa is in the northern part of Israel, and it has plenty of places. There are some industry, there's a bit of sport you see in the airport, and there are some views, the Baha'i gardens. Our university, it's on the top of the mountain in a nature reserve. You see the tower, you see some of the buildings. We recently moved down to the downtown area next to the port. So this is where we are. And as kind of a reference, Israel is twice as large as Cyprus, but Israel has 6 times the population, so a bit more dense. So some statistics. Okay. Our talk today is about designing for accessibility and cultural heritage, exploring tangible technologies for enhancing the museum visit experience for blind visitors. This is kind of a very nice title. Yeah, I should start and say that for me, after 20 years of being at the University of Haifa, this is a course that was the most engaging emotionally one that I took part of. And this is only the second course that I'm actually presenting and telling stories about. First one was about algorithmic transparency, something that we developed together in the framework of a cited project. This is something we just developed and delivered last year. And this is something that I'm very happy to share our lessons learned, tell you whatever I can tell, and I'll be very happy for discussions rather than just kind of following the slides and telling stories. The course has been born based on, as a result of a collaboration with Alexandra Saad, which is an occupational therapist at our university, and myself. Alexandra used to be my PhD student long time ago, and she all the time works with people with disabilities, starting from her PhD. And eventually we got the idea to try to see about how to design a museum visit for people with visual impairments, which is a real challenge. And it seems to me is real potential contribution to society. And this is something that got me engaged, and I simply jumped on the occasion, and we did it last year. We created this course at the very last moment, and it worked. It was extremely successful. We'll discuss a little bit about it later. So what we did is we thought about how to train the developers, how to design a course for developers to develop museum experience for blind people. And the challenge is obvious. Here's part of our museum. You can see that there is a way that people with wheelchairs can access all the way until the big picture over there. Okay, how the pointer works, or we don't have a pointer here. Yep, they can access with a wheelchair until this point. Here it's gravel, so people with wheelchairs cannot move there. Definitely blind people cannot experience anything here. And this kind of, it's a typical museum. Here's another aspect of the museum. You can see glass boxes, objects. Some of them are within the glass boxes, some of them outside, different shapes, different sizes. Again, think about people with disabilities. Within it, people with wheelchairs may have hard time enjoying those. People with visual impairment, definitely not. Everything is protected and it is impossible to touch. And here's a simple exhibition. You see all kinds of goddesses, statues, different materials, clay or stone, within a glass box. It is hard to explore. This is another wing of the museum, and you can see large objects, not protected, but still think about the ability to touch and feel and experience the sizes and the shapes of this object if you are unable to see them. And again, exhibitions are very dense with a lot of objects. For us, it's very easy to grasp. You just look, you see, you understand, you focus on what you are interested in, and you get the information. There are additional challenges in museum object. We will not get it, but we can get additional challenges and aspects of the museum visit later on. But for people with visual impairment, I think it's very clear. So the whole idea was to try and create an interdisciplinary course to get teams that are combined with from people with technological background, so they can produce technological solutions, and people with humanistic occupational therapy kind of this kind of attitude towards people supporting them. So have a mixed teams thinking together about creating solutions for people with disabilities. So we had a collaboration between the occupational therapy department and the information system department, the technology and the people point of view. And we are lucky to have the museum on site. We have at our university a museum which has a large archaeological wing, an art wing, and also the remains of an ancient merchant ship recovered and restored and put on display, where actually there was a replica that has been built and it sailed. I think it got all the way to Cyprus at a certain point of time and back. So just another anecdote. So it was visiting. Think about that. So what we wanted to do is to explore the potential of using state-of-the-art technology for enhancing the museum visit experience for people with disabilities or people with visual impairments. So first of all, we wanted to develop some kind of a framework how to educate the developers in order to train them the way to create such an experience. So we wanted to develop a framework. We wanted to implement it in a controlled environment. When you have a course, a framework of a course, there is a time span, there are slots for lectures, there is independent work. So there is some kind of a framework to work. So it's a controlled environment of a course. And we wanted to have a collaboration between our students, occupational therapy, information system, the staff, and blind visitors or visually impaired visitors. So it was quite a challenge and unusual combination. We wanted to develop the framework, we wanted to implement it, we wanted also to demonstrate it. So we wanted to get an actual product out of this experience. And our goal was to evaluate it, but this is something that is quite challenging in the framework of a course. Try to do some evaluation with real visitors. So this is future work. It is ongoing right now. So we are doing that. So training the developers, we decided to go for a graduate course because our bachelor students are there for ticking, I did this, I did that, I got the grade, I'm graduating. So we wanted people that will be motivated to be part of this course, to take part and to invest thinking and effort and time. And so we were aimed at a graduate course. We had small and interdisciplinary teams, people from occupational therapy and information systems. We had 16 students at this course. And next year, we will have something between 16 and 24. We want to keep the course small, and we want to have real hands-on experience. So we combine technology and human aspects, information system department, social welfare and health sciences. This is the faculty. And it was kind of a problem-based learning. So there is a challenge, come up with a solution. And there is a diverse set of technologies. We talked about user-centered design, co-creation, interaction design, hands-on approaches, experience design, 3D scanning, 3D printing, using sensors, NFC, microswitches. We had all kinds of ideas, but we focused on this, and also preparing some audio commentary. And all this in a combination and an integration of the students and the museum staff. Quite unusual. This is the team that was involved in the teaching of the course. Usually you have a teacher, maybe a teaching assistant, and you're done. Here we had a large team in the center. There are 2 blind volunteers and the rest of us that were involved in teaching. And this is simply the picture of the students in a certain point of time when everything is demonstrated. So what we try to do is consider human product interaction and client data collection, bringing methods and tools either from occupational therapy or from information systems about measurements and usability evaluation and feedback and recommendations, and then blending all this into a graphical design of a solution, considering obviously the cost of different components and objects, printing time, scanning, 3D scanning and printing eventually takes time. So it was a lot of effort there. So we tried to define a development process, focusing on interaction, intensive interaction with actual users and getting feedback and developing a solution. The course or the process was composed of several steps. The first step was conceptualization. We asked the students, we described them the challenge, and we asked them to come up with a description of a suggested solution as the first step. Then we had a museum visit with blind people. We'll talk a bit about that. As a result, we asked them to revise their suggestions and their ideas. Once they came up with their suggested ideas for solutions, they created prototypes, kind of what we call cardboard prototypes or video prototypes, demonstrating the idea that they have in mind in order to have a group discussion, some feedback from peers and from the instructors. Finally, they had an initial development of actual solutions. These solutions were evaluated by 2 volunteers, a blind one that was completely blind and one visually impaired, which gradually lost her sight. So we presented, or they presented and got feedback from visitors. Then the final stage of redeveloping the solutions and presentations. That was the end of this course. What we did at the second class, the first meeting was an introductory. Provided some introduction, explained things. Next class was a visit to the museum as and with blind people, trying to get some empathy. So half of the students were blindfolded, half of them were guiding them, and they walked from class to the museum, and within the museum, they experienced the museum. They tried to touch whatever is possible. They were accompanied by whoever guided them in order to get an idea about what it is to be a blind person visiting this kind of environment, trying to have some kind of a first-hand experience, at least a demonstration of how things may look for a blind person. And here you can... Yeah, sure.
How this affects the overall design? These people have memory of what these objects are, whereas if somebody is blind and they're born, they will not have the same frustrations as the person that knows what it looks like and suddenly they cannot see it. So I'm wondering how that affects the overall design of this kind of...
This is a very important comment. This is something that we did not consider, we did not address, but this is something that we are trying to consider how to address in the future. Hopefully we will go on with this because we have now a PhD student that will be working on that. So this is one of the questions we do have. There are several questions that come up to mind. First of all, the difference between people that have a memory of something so they can imagine what they are touching, and those that have no memory but just have to feel. So this is something that we need to see how to deal with. Another interesting thing is that if you're looking at the museum object, if you're looking at the ceramic, at the vase, and so, they're painted. And the painting, you cannot touch the painting because it is painted. How can we let people, blind people, feel what is painted on object? This is another thing that we will have to see how to deal with. So there are quite a few questions that still remain open, or we will get to know later on. Definitely, we don't have all the questions, and for sure we don't have all the answers. So this is how they walked into the museum, and we've seen some of the interaction within the museum, touching objects and walking around. Then, once they have this kind of personal experience, they walked around with two blind visitors in the museum and interviewed them and tried to get their opinion about how is it to visit the museum when you don't see, and what you can feel and what you can touch and how to do that. So we had the first part, just trying to get the feeling of walking blindfolded in the museum, and then walking with these two volunteers and trying to interview them and discuss them and see how they can, what they can do for that. This led to rethinking about their initial ideas and the prototypes, because we want them to, first of all, think without any idea of anything, just come and think about the solution, and then refine the solution according to what they had in mind. Then comes the museum role, because if you think about blind people that are coming to the museum, there is a lot to see there. There are plenty of objects, there are exhibitions, there are themes, there are different aspects there. And if you're talking about a blind person can walk around and enjoy everything. So we thought about trying to have a thematic experience. With the museum help, we tried to define different themes. So we talked about ancient weapons. We see here an axe head and a sword and an arrowhead. So we first of all, selected several themes, and within every theme, we selected several objects that enables us to tell a story, not just individual object, but tell something more generic. So they were ancient weapons, we see them here. There's something about writing. This is kind of an ink reservoir made of stone. And there were a few more items. There was an issue of religions. So there is a statue here that we had like several statues. And what was interesting about these statues, that were selected based on geographical regions. So there are different goddesses from different regions in the Mediterranean, and we'll see the suggested solution for them. Then there were burial traditions, and burial traditions in ancient times, when people are being buried, they put all kinds of souvenirs inside the coffin or the sarcophage or whatever they put them. So the objects that are within this coffin were selected, as well as a big coffin itself. So the idea is to select several objects to be able to tell a story about them. Now the interaction design. They don't see. So with respect to senses, what we can do? Touch exhibits and provide audio commentary. So they can touch and feel and get a sense of the object, and they can hear explanation about the object. They can touch and feel the shape, the texture, the weight, if we are providing the right replicas. They hear explanations, maybe background noise, depending upon the design of the audio commentary. Well, it's also possible to smell, but this is something, technology is not there for that yet, and we gave up on this idea. We had 4 different solutions suggested. Each and every group suggested a solution that is slightly different from another. We had burial tradition, and based on the concept and the object that were selected, it was a combination of visiting on site, being able to touch real object, and a set of objects that are replicas that are presented. Religions, they were small statues taken from different places of the Mediterranean, so there was a map produced of the Mediterranean when each and every statue fits to its specific region. So you had like the base was a triangle or a circle or a square, so they could not put them in different places, so they get an idea of the geography. And then again, it brings up the question whether they are familiar or not with geographical regions, questions that we didn't answer yet. Writing, a set of objects that are related to writing, stamps that you can roll on a clay and get the feeling of what it produces, and a set of other objects. Then ancient weapons, we had an armory, or kind of the idea of replicating an armory. All these exhibits were actually 3D replicas of museum objects, and they were augmented with audio commentary. Audio activation differed. There were NFC tags, there were push buttons, there were micro switches, different techniques that we are now going to explore how useful they are, what are the preferred techniques, and we'll see now quite a few challenges and issues that we had to address. So the first idea was to create some cardboard, something quick and dirty to present and get feedback and discuss. So we see here the burial tradition, and what we see here, this is the area in the museum where there are 2 coffins that are being placed, and there is the area of the exhibition, and this is a student presenting. So there are like a mirror and this kind of a duck, and there is a stamp ring that were selected. And then we see here the idea about the religion, different regions, and you can see that there is like a circle and a triangle and a square, each and every region with its own statue of a god being presented by another student, and then just a video presentation of a different solution based on switches. So, and finally, the idea of an armory, a set of weapons inside a box or inside of a room, which is an armory, and just explaining the ideas. So we had this initial presentation, there were discussions and comments, and we went to actually do the project. So we had 3D scanners, and we can see that we are scanning the ink box, and there is an arrowhead, and there is the duck here, and a sword, and kind of a stone, and all the objects were real museum objects that were 3D scanned, and then they were printed. So we can see here the three statues of goddesses being printed, the duck that is being printed, all the writing materials being printed, and kind of the geographical regions that are being printed for being used as an object for demonstration. Another 3D printed kind of the sword that was printed, and then we had this kind of a printed object put together, and the exhibits were demonstrated, and we let blind users to use them. And what's interesting enough to show this kind of the idea of an armory. What they did here, they tried to put on the side the type of material that what is in this area was made of. So there is metal, and there are some stones, and there is some wood. And what they did, the idea was to try and let the person that experienced the specific weapon actually get an idea of the material that the weapon is made of. This was a complete failure, because here you have the metal, here you have a plastic sword. How do you link them? So this was a colossal failure. It was very impressive. This was the idea of you have the prototype, you get the actual users to experience, and you get the feedback. And this is something that caused a complete change in their design. Then they had the goddesses, then there are the switch buttons. So here are the different prototypes, and this is the one that miserably failed. They put a lot of thought. They want, okay, we want the person to get an idea of the material that the weapon is made of, and there was no connection. This is the prototype, and it is hard to see, but I will explain it a bit later, of the burial tradition. Here are the two coffins that, discussing with the museum staff about blind people experience, they said, okay, if a visitor is accompanied by a guide, then the visitor may touch this object in order to get an idea about their size, because they are huge. And here are the set of items that were found inside such coffins. And we see this here. And here there are a few things that they planned. They said, okay, we put the items in a specific place. So there is the duck, there is a coffin, there's the mirror, there is a stamp, and there is kind of a sticker with a background story that you start from. You see the numbers, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. There is an order. You put your smartphone, or you put here, it's kind of a RFID tag. So you put the smartphone here, you hear the background story, then you move the devices one by one, and you get the story. And finally, you are getting the final commentary. So you take the device, you take the object, put it on the board, hear the commentary, and put it back in place. What is wrong here? There are two things that are wrong in this exhibition. First of all, is where to put. And another thing, there's another thing that you may think of. Numbers. Blind people not necessarily recognize numbers the way we do. These were two comments that came up for this exhibition. Then we had a set of boxes where items were put in, and they're like push buttons. So you have a push button for an initial commentary and overview, and then specific objects with explanation about them. And all you have to do is push a button and listen to the explanation about the object that you are holding or touching. So you can see here that there is a place to take the object from and put it back. And the interaction is rather simple. And finally, there were the different types of printed goddesses that you have to put in the right place. So there is no way to make a mistake. The shapes fit because each and every god or goddess fit into a specific place. Finally, we had the final versions. So we had this push buttons based solution. Here there is a clay when you can roll the stamp and feel what it does, because it's a soft clay, so you can at least understand the idea of rolling a stamp on a clay and getting something printed. And there are different types of, there's the ink reservoir, another stamp, and a piece of printed material. Then there is the idea of having map-based and goddesses. And this is what was changed with Reflect to the Armory. So you have RFID tags linked to these individual objects, and you need to put your either mobile device next to this object to here, or you put them in a different, move them to a specific place, and here the commentary. And actually you can see that they also got long spears there. And here the solution that was fixed for the burial tradition presentation. So you see that there is an area, you put back your object. So there is a place, there is a guide, where the object fits. So you need to find a way and you put the object and it fits. So it needs to be a little wider, but there is a place to put it back in place. And there are the numbers in Braille writing, so they can be identified if the people are not identifying the number. So there is a sequence, but there are some hints about how it can work. So we had all these devices, all these exhibits presented, final presentation with the museum, with the volunteers, with all the students. And basically, we had this course completed with a summary that, first of all, what was nice about it, it was an interdisciplinary course, but not only the students participated. Each and every student recruited their family to help. Producing those boxes, these aluminum boxes, a student got her husband to create the boxes. We didn't have anything. The students did it at home. They recruited their family. They rehearsed in front of their family, presenting, asking their opinion. I think that the engagement of the students was above and beyond what we had in mind. But technically, we had an interdisciplinary course. It combined intensive literature reviews and iterative development. Students has to do their research about accessibility or blind people in museums, come up with ideas, suggest solutions, and develop them. We had 4 different ideas for solutions, 4 different interaction techniques, either the micro switches, the buttons, or different ways of RFID-based readers. They were implemented and demonstrated. It was highly appreciated both by the blind volunteers and by the museum staff. And the museum staff asked for getting high-quality products in order to be used on a daily basis with blind people. And we were lucky to have a person that may go on with this, because one of our team, which is also with design background, decided to go for a PhD working on this area. So what we are actually doing is want to get it in, put it in actual use. And well, another course, now we are actually going to do it in the fall semester of 2023. And at the moment, we have 2 graduate students working. One is helping the programming and shaping the different products. Another one is designing the experimentation with real visitors, and these are things that are taking place now. We hope to be done with this evaluation during the summer, by the end of the summer, and we're thinking about ideas how to extend it actually to become a PhD thesis about supporting people with disabilities, whether blind people or whether in general, in the next few years. Yeah, we are considering additional aspects of accessibility. So basically, this is our experience that started as an idea for a course, and now it continues as a course, plus graduate student working. And we have, luckily, there is a workshop in Athens in September about accessibility experience in museum, so co-located with Mobile XCI, that we are going to go there, and seems there is an interest in this area. And I've seen this maker's space here. So I think that if you're up to it, go ahead and create your own course for graduate students using the facilities that you have here. You have museums, you have students, you have the capabilities, just go ahead and do it. It's great. Questions, comments, discussions, you did not interfere, so it's a bit disappointing. But yes.
Yeah, so thanks for the presentation. So I was wondering why 3D printing and not actually building some of these objects with the materials that are similar to the original ones. Get the sense of touch that you so much want.
Great question. This is why, for instance, I got the models of the 3 goddesses, and I'm going to ask kindly your help in printing them in clay, because to get the real material. The point is, yes, the real material is important. But the point is that getting, first of all, 3D scanning, you're getting a model. It is easy. Then producing it from the real material is a challenge. So having a 3D printer, this is the easiest solution. And what we had, well, actually, it's, again, also university politics. We do have a clay printer at the University of Haifa. So I asked the guy about in that department, well, can I print an object? Well, we need to consider about the time, the effort, the budget. You'll have to pay for that. And thank you. We print it out of plastic. But yes, getting the right material is the best idea. But you need to have the facilities to create it either from wood. Well, actually, one of the goddesses is basalt. I have no idea how to create a basalt statue. Clay, we have 3D printers. So it's kind of, we printed it from plastic because this was the easiest and the solution that was available for us. It is better to replicate or to create replicas from the real material because it gives you the actual feeling. That's for sure. And this is something to think about the future. I learned that there are ways to somehow create something that is similar to wood here, and there is clay. So we are on the way. Technology improves. Yep.
So much, very nice presentation. Since I'm a neuroscientist, I'm thinking a little bit something about the compounding effects that Panagiotis mentioned before in your first moment. And another thing that we have to consider, especially with blind people, is the sense of touch, which is much more developed in blind people. Because I saw that you are also doing some experiments with people who are not blind and so on. And it's a strong, it might be a strong confounding factor. And I was thinking, see people experiment like that. Brainstorming maybe as well. The sense of when someone is touching an object, for example, at the same time, when they're touching, we can create also something like a 3D model. And we can compare this with people who are not blind, just enough precise, how much time they need to touch and how many areas of an object in order to understand, to realize what object is.
You should send me an email and we should design an experiment and we'll go ahead and do that. But the way what you are presenting is something that is very well, okay. And on another line of research, we created 3D replicas that we embedded sensors within them, like gyroscope and accelerometer, in order to be able to let people actually touch them and see how they examine it, how they are looking at the object, how they examine the object when the objects are not trivial. So this is something that in line with what you're talking about, and this might be very interesting to see what are the differences. I assume that there are differences, but okay, so we need to get a master student to do the literature survey about what can we find in the literature for that, and then go ahead and do some experiment. No, but you want, but the object that you're touching, assuming that you are touching, I know, an arrowhead or a goddess, there are tiny details that you better touch and feel and understand the shapes of the object. To my opinion, it needs to be very accurate because you try to understand the tiny details of the object and learn about what is there. Well, okay, there is like a 3D model of a goddess, and the goddess is standing like this and touching her breasts. So you need to explain that it's kind of something about fertility. So you need the person that examines the object understands what is there in order to be able to explain the meaning. So the details are important, depends upon what your goal is. So this is something that, and it might be interesting to see whether people are blind or people that are not blind, touching and feeling and how they interpret different objects.
Asking, did you choose specific objects from the museum that were easy to work with, replicating 3D printing, or did you want to create a story for the visitors to get an overall experience of the available objects at the museum?
It's a combination. We selected objects that are linked together somewhere and represent a specific theme, and that can be easily scanned and printed. So it's a combination of these two. Yeah.
So trying to create like short courses for either students or the industry or open to the public. How easy do you think it's going to be to replicate this course?
Very easy.
I mean, what it's going to take in terms of logistics here?
Nothing. We have the syllabus. We are willing to share it. You have the technology. You have the skills. All you have to do is just kind of, there are a bit of theoretical aspect like interaction design, user-centered design. There are some theoretical parts here. There is a lot of thinking of the students that needs to be done. There is a need to find volunteers to work with the students for providing feedback, and you need a collaborator, a museum that will be able to collaborate. But the ideas are simple. You need to get a theme. You need to be able to tell a story about a certain set of objects that are selected that can be printed and creating a replica, and you're done. And you need to get some students that are really engaged, that are really into it. It's not something that kind of, okay, let's take a course and we are done. This is something that really requires some engagement, but that's all. It was a semester. It was like 14 weeks. We had it, we are going to have it this time 4 hours a week over 13 or 14 weeks. Last time we had it like it was every 2 weeks, a session of 4 hours. There was a lot of work done by the students alone at home and in teams. This is so this is why we are trying to extend it. It was, they complained. They loved it, but they complained. No one dropped out. It was highly engaging. This is very nice. This is what this was the impression. So if there is an interest, we'll be very happy to share any lessons, to help in any way. I think it's a great, I think this is a kind of course that actually is very practical with the potential to contribute to society in kind of in an immediate way. And what you have here is you have the technology, you have the right technology to actually apply.
Question. So since audio is obviously very important, and audio is not just somebody speaking to you, it's also some auditory sensory information. Like, let's say you get something metallic, you hear somebody hitting the metal.
So we had, this is something that we had background noise. So you have the commentary, but you may also have a background noise. I didn't say about it, but like the weapons, like if you pick up the sword, you hear like lessons of, you hear the sounds of a battle or something. So they thought about it. But indeed, something that a comment about the audio commentary, we did not discuss it, but in past studies, we produced commentaries for a museum visit. We created a museum visitor guide, very nice, position, kind of location-based, personalized, whatever in the museum. And part of it was creating content, audio presentation or multimedia presentations. And if you are creating something to be used in a museum, it should be highly accurate, professionally made, professionally read. There's no way to get away with something which is kind of not professional. This is something that is extremely effort and time consuming. So this is something that needs to be taken into account. And if you're going to do something in a realistic setting, you need to have the museum involved, or you need experts to be involved. And as far as I know, a museum is an empire, and the empire has an emperor, and the emperor needs to approve each and every presentation, each and everything that you do, these are the way things are going. But I think it is worth the effort.
Thanks, Tsvi.
Thank you for listening. I'm very happy to share this kind of experience. Unlike other talks that I'm giving, this is something really very important. I hope that someone will take it and go on with it here.
Tsvi will be around until Friday.
Yeah, I'm around.
Thanks for the
Okay.